Alright guys, hello, welcome back to Rage and Loop. The Revelation train might have ended, but we're not done yet, because we do have a couple end post-game stories. Starting with the Huntress versus Bear. Don't even read it, I'm not reading it. What could the Huntress be? Probably Chiemi. What else is a Huntress? It's just Chiemi. I don't know, man. Illusion / comedy. The land of the Great North, Canada, brings with it a trial, a fight with a new god, the bizarre adventure of an unfunny hero and swindler. Just send me, man. It's gonna be a Haraki Chiemi story. That made sense. I mean, Chiemi's the only huntress, and we're kind of a swindler, so.
彼女芹沢千恵美は参っていた。
わあ、物書きにあるまじきクソみたいな表現。
ちょっと待ってほしい。美女はクソとか言うべきではない。
True.
美女？イエーイ！周囲に誰もいないからって、キャッキャフフしてる場合じゃなくない？
She was the only one flirting here, but anyway. Yeah, the fact that there was no one around was actually risky to us. When I got lost in the Kachihara area, Mount Sarunashi, otherwise known as Shinai-san, but that wouldn't last much longer, I felt I was in a lot of danger. But this time the danger was completely different. Please be in Canada. The Great North? First, this wasn't a mountain, but an endless plain with an endless forest on an endless road. Everything was endless, as we talked about whether this was really Japan and whether the land was testing us. We got lost on a forest road. I mean, this doesn't really look like a forest. Naturally, there's no reception. It was nothing magical, though we were just too far from civilization. And while my bike was broken, classic, the engine had made an ominous noise and stopped providing power properly. It felt dangerous, so I stopped driving, and it felt completely silent. We were stuck in the middle of Mother Nature. This was Hokkaido. That's pretty north. The northernmost part of Japan. It was an autonomous region, and an island with a surface area 40 times bigger than Tokyo. It was the breadbasket of Japan and a mecca of agriculture, forestry, and fishing. Why were we here, you wonder? On a whim, of course. Let's go as far away as possible. You got it, and that was all she wrote. We've been riding my bike ever since Chiemi infiltrated my home and workplace. We went up north, then took a ferry in Sendai to Hokkaido. While being jostled around by the boat for a whole day, I did consider whether going as far away as possible was a good idea. But the difference in air and scenery we found once we disembarked swept all those doubts away. This was definitely a special place. I could totally understand why so many people insisted on spending money and time going on bike trips to Hokkaido. The experience of escaping the heat of Honshu and going through a pleasant, open space full of life was precious. Naturally, the trip was great up until this happened, but we are now at a significant risk of changing our minds. Glad he learned. Learned from last time when he just didn't have tools in the main story.
前はあんなに頼りなかったのに違えるようで千恵美さん嬉しい。
いかん。これは修理不能だ。
あなたは一瞬で女子を幻滅させる名人か。
That was fast for him to determine.
いや違うんだって。ほら。
うわ、パックリ言ってんじゃん。
That's really bad.
しかもほら、液が。
びちゃびちゃじゃん。
That's what fluid is.
それでもう息が上がっちゃって。
このピッチマシンめ。
分かってやってたのか。
千恵美のエロ対応力をなめちゃダメです。
I didn't get that subtext at all.
何これすごい故障
And
じゃん
usually I can pick up on that. I mean, this part just doesn't sound dirty at all. Just this part, I guess, technically. But even look at this fluid. Fluid's not really an erotic word, I think. The tube providing coolant had completely fallen off. Hell, the metal parts supporting it were destroyed. I had no memory of hitting something. It wasn't bent in any way, and the damage was very clean. Sabotage?
初期不良かも。
うわぁ最悪新車なのに。
しかしまあ、起きてること自体はそう難しいことじゃないんだ。
We'd lost the coolant and the engine had overheated. That was that. Unfortunately, I couldn't connect this pipe properly, but I could just barely fix it with the duct tape I have. For now, if I cooled off the engine and found some water nearby to replace the coolant... Water does not work like that, right? I don't really know too much about cars or engines in general, and obviously this is a bike, so it might be different, but I remember my mom had a coolant problem once when driving, and then she just had a bottle of water and put it in, and it literally did nothing, which made sense. We could continue going even if the water leaked, but maybe, you know, on a motorcycle, when the engine's a lot smaller, right? Maybe it works, I don't know.
というわけなんだけど、水の容器になるものってあるかな？
あるある。
Hokkaido was a long trip, so we didn't come completely unprepared. There were some plastic containers on the bike that made it look pretty uncool, and Shimi had a rucksack on her. They had some food and clothing for colder climates inside, and one of them had 2 empty 2-liter plastic bottles. It was pretty hot yesterday, so we emptied the sports drink inside and just kept them with us. It was cloudy and chilly today. It was better than blazing heat, but that caused me to forget to get some water.
よし。とりあえずバイクは路肩に止めて、水を手に入れよう。漏れる分を都度補給しつつ、次の町にたどり着いて修理。
それが一番確実か。でも水ってどこで手に入れる？
地図によると、こっちの林を突っ切ると川がある。そこまで行ければなんとか。
迷わない？
1キロほど踏み込むけど大丈夫でしょう。
Kilometer in.
最悪、川沿いに歩けば何キロか先だけど、この橋のところでこの道に合流。
Alright, they got it planned out at least.
危なくない？
どんな川かわからないけど、危なそうなら近づかないでおこう。最悪、何十キロか歩けば人里にはつけるんだし。いかがか？この
dozen or so kilometers away. Isn't like 1 kilometer 15-minute walk? No, right? I think they taught us that in daycare, but that's just not true, I think. I think it's shorter, but still.
まあいいんじゃないかな。
Guess it's better than just doing nothing. Unless water doesn't work on the bike, then it's kind of pointless, it does. After that incident, we become a bit more careful than before. Why? Because we only had 1 life and no resets. True. Both Jimmy and I were the kind to push ourselves a bit too hard, so situations like this could often endanger our lives. Thus, we would casually, but with certainty, focus on safety. I was careful not to drive dangerously, and Jimmy was learning a lot about such trips from the handbook she bought along the way. For a couple that had repeatedly killed each other in the dream, we actually had a pretty nice thing going. For repeatedly kill, I feel like there was more... It's making it sound more two-sided than it was. It's definitely just Chiemi killing us.
面倒かけて申し訳ないです。
いいのです。そもそも誘ったの私だし、そりゃちょっといきなり北海道かよと思わなくはなかったけど。
マジですいません。
いや、ツッコミ待ちっぽいのを突っ込まないようにしようと頑張り続けた結果なので、ある意味私にも責任が。
その通りだ。ずっとツッコミを待ってたのになぜ止めてくれなかったんだ。
Ready to blame her, right at a sign of weakness. My man.
出た、高速手のひら返し。これがあるからなかなか素直
僕はあらゆるコミュニケーションにガチのエンターテインメントをインプリメントしたいだけですよ。
エルザスとロートリンゲンのこけしをコンプライアンスなレインメーカーしつつシカゴをカムチャッカするわけですね。
Don't get it. Do not get the joke or
そう
reference.
かよ。
Oh shit. That's a grizzly bear? I think you guys are dead. A brown bear. A mature one that weighed between 300 and 500 kilometers. They were the apex of land animals in Japan, omnivorous but loved meat, special skills bear claw and bear hug. Yeah, I think in this position you're just kind of dead. Unless you got some bear spray or something. Might kinda be dead.
確かクマは本来おとなしい動物だから驚かさない程度に騒音を立てていれば向こうから逃げてく
I
る
don't
さ。
know if it's for grizzly bears, but aren't you supposed to like stick out your arms to look big and like yell hey bear? I know you definitely do that for black bears. I don't know if like grizzly bears it works because they're kind of huge.
私、芹沢千恵みーちゃん、油が乗って美味しいよ。
Swing.
痛い。その音がこの方を脅かす。
逃げろバカ。
Well, or aren't you supposed to climb a tree? I forgot. No, bears can climb trees, I think. Seeing Shammy scream and run brought me back to my senses. Why was I joking around with the bear? Yeah, I don't think he's joking. He's in a laughing mood.
背中見せないで。背中を追う性質があるから。
ブリッジ走行したらどうなる？
What's the bridge run?
いい加減に
Oh,
してるぞひねくれ人間。
like the reverse crab walk? That's a classic.
ごめんなさい。
What if it's just a guy in a suit trolling them? The bear was large enough that I had to look up to see its face. Standing up, it was over 3 meters tall. It roared and flailed its arms. Towards the bike.
バイクに興味示した。今のうち逃げるよ。
逃げるってどこに？
わかんないけど、とりあえず絶対止まんないで。
Into the forest, I guess. The young couple ran backwards through the endless forest.
あ、バイクこけた。
やめてくれ！
That bike's our homie, man. It's been with us for so long. I ran. Once the bear was out of sight, I turned around and ran as fast as I could. I was the first to run out of breath, but Shimi was becoming exhausted herself. I was pretty sure we ran about 3 full kilometers.
ちょっと整理させてくれ。
どうぞ。
僕らはヒグマに襲われたのか？
うん。いいのかい。
And now you have no bike. It might be destroyed.
ああ、千恵美のツッコミに生きている実感を覚えるわけでもさほどない。
さほどないんかい。ごめん、春明さん。いい加減疲労と緊張がサービス精神を上回りそうだわ。
ごめん。正直あの流れで突然クマが出るとか、タチの悪いギャグかなんかとしか思えなくて。
タチの悪いギャグでヒグマ繰り出すって、どんだけお笑い精神旺盛なのよ、北の大地。
正直、今でもあれをどう捉えていいのか。
ヒグマだよ。
ちょっとくらい立ち止まらない？
春明さんはクマのヤバさを甘く見てる。奴らは気まぐれで変質的なハンターにもなり得るの。人里まで
Definitely
逃
don't
げ
want
な
to
いと。
run into it again, now that we don't have a distraction. Ah. Speak of the devil.
それにヒグマがあいつ一頭だけとは。カメラ
Unless that's a different one. That would be funny if it was the same one. The appearance of the second, I just said it is a different one, made Chimmy lose her grip on the situation. It grabbed her by the collar and started backing away. The new one was smaller than the other and didn't seem all that aggressive. Was it a female? The way she tilted her head was actually cute. Yeah, that doesn't look that cute to me. But this was actually a wild animal. She could probably kill us while thinking something like, "Oh my, what's this strange meat?" Seeing the panicking humans before her made her realize the danger. And to us, that was more dangerous than any moment in the Feast of the Yomi Purge. Well, I wouldn't say any moment. I feel like when Shiami was shooting up the place was probably more dangerous than a bear attack with Mochi. Or maybe, you know, I don't know if it counts as in the Feast of the Yomi Purge, but you know, giant spooter. As we ran, the second bear chased after us. We're a human, we could sing a song about bears and run off, but that wouldn't work on this beast. As Shiami panicked, I calmed her down and then thought of a way to get out of this. Of course, there was a golden rule for getting away from a bear. I took off the bait on my back and threw it at the bear. Naturally, the bear followed it with interest, buying us some distance. Lots of it, even. That was where all your supplies were, though.
ここまで来れば
Upon saying that, I realized I fucked up. I knew that where this was going. Wait, how? This was some hidden manga game, right? There's no way that apply. Ha ha ha. Bro's in the bear forest, man. They're just spawning everywhere. My thoughts were still in fiction created mode. That had to be why I was acting so weird about this. Haha. Imagine surviving Raging Loop and dying to like bears in the forest. Like, it's still kind of a crazy death, but it still feel pretty bad. I didn't have the energy to react anymore, so I just took Shimmy's hand and ran. I hated TV culture and the humor of its comedians. Both would be useless in a fight for survival in the wild. They would just waste my energy, turning decisiveness into jokes. I knew that was unreasonable, which seemed to show that I was saner than Shammy at least.
私生きて戻ったらあらゆるドッキリ番組ロケとクマが出るアニメを潰して
What
回
about the
ってやる
cute one with the bear? Forgot what it was called. But, you know, that's the only bear anime I can think of. Ippo had a bearish episode, I think. When the dude punched a bear and killed it. She charged as fast as she could, and her voice was dense with madness and seriousness. Crap, I needed her to stay sane. And no, I wouldn't destroy bear anime. Their lives would be in danger, especially the yellow one. No, Winnie the Pooh, man. Again? Something wasn't right here. We met bears no matter where we went, yet we were still alive. Dude, this is the bear god pranking you. Can you... no reception. I was like, speed down, Mitsuji. Instantly, we left the road a long time ago, and we're now lost in an unfamiliar forest. That made the likelihood of running into bears all that much higher. What the hell is this? Bear world? A trap of some kind? Where are we being chased into our deaths? Oh, if only we had God to help us this time. However, her holy land was hundreds of kilos away, and the lord of the mountain where you only had moon bears would probably faint upon seeing these beasts. I mean, I didn't even think of Mujina, but Mujina probably would help more than Mitsuji. And she probably had bad chemistry with Shiami. Oh, she definitely does. Shimi had said that right after the incident, she left Yasumizu and returned to college. Though she no longer thought she didn't belong there, she didn't consider Yasumizu to be her ultimate home. Also, well, she probably cared about me too. That was why she got in touch with Mitsuji and became friends with her. Human relations were sure were something. What I wanted to say was, that was the reason why I thought she and God wouldn't get along, since God was basically tied to that general area. After the incident, Shimi had been able to settle the story with God and change her perception of the concept. However, that didn't mean she could get along with her. Unlike her, I couldn't see God, but I figured that she no longer loomed over her. Oh no. As we ran around, not sure what was going on, we arrived at a certain place. It was pretty large. Half of it was basically a rock large enough to look up at, while the other half was countless withered trees, though they were just 2-3 meters long, wooden sticks that were placed against the rock. The materials were natural, but the result sure wasn't. I felt a similar thing like this when I saw the Okiba. It seemed to blend in with the environment, but it was clearly somewhat unnatural. I looked around, all alert. There were no brown bears around for the time being, but...
春明さん、
ああ、
神様がいる。
え
New god just dropped? Chimmy looked at the structure with distant eyes. She then closed them, it joined her hands and bowed. It looked so extremely natural and spontaneous that I didn't know how to react. So I joined my own hands.
使わせてもらおう。
え何なのここ。
昔、誰かが残したお家。
A home. I walked up and realized she was speaking the truth. All that running took us from a plain to a mountain area. The trees were paired with large boulders. The largest rocks of them all, canopied by an overhang of withered trees, had a little bit of space on the inside you could live in. The boulders and the withered trees were like a roof and walls. Of course it did little against the rain and wind, but it could handle snow probably. This might have been a winter residence. There's dried grass near the withered trees too, and indeed this did seem like a proper dwelling. The iron pan hanging on one branch made it clear that someone had been living here.
お邪魔します。
Unperturbed, Chimmy promptly took off her shoes and entered. She then sat down in the middle.
春明さんも休もう。ここは安全らしい。
Apparently, who did she hear that from? I'd asked, but I figured it was pointless. I then took off my shoes, which was probably some sort of gesture of respect, and sat down on the soft, dry grass, not glass. Though the only thing separating us from the outside were rocks and withered trees, the inside felt a bit different than the outside. It actually felt like a peaceful place to rest. Boundary. That word came to mind.
敷居は結界じゃ。神語りは結界越しになさるがよい。
It assumed, realized that the god in the incident that Chimmy was afraid of was a kind of information-based organism. It was hard to admit it, but it had a human-like awareness and intelligence, though I wasn't sure about a sense of identity. Anyway, unlike other organisms, it didn't need a body, DNA or any physical memory storage to sustain its life, its information. It used some way of recording itself in natural and artificial objects as elaborately concealed information. Then, when recognized by intelligent organisms, they would influence their consciousness and become manifest. Then the affected human would leave God behind in some way and spread, effectively living on. It reminded me of a famous horror novel, the one about the dead person who appeared on a cursed video. The Ring? Yeah, The Ring. Or Ringu in Japan. It is based on like a novel series. I kind of wanted to read them. I actually really liked the Ring manga, which I feel like was underrated, but I remember in elementary school that shit was scary to me. The movie version was famous for its representation of ghosts, but the theme of the original novel was the ever-spreading, evolving visual information. Video was itself a type of data too, and conversation flaws, editing and changes in film were like DNA mutations. And the curse spread through fear by stimulating people's egotistical life functions. Since it couldn't multiply by itself, it made others spread it. Instead, in that sense, it was much like a virus. Viruses, too, were creatures without much beside their DNA. They were barely alive. So they had to living cells and just copy themselves. What a hell of a survival strategy. God was like this too. The only difference was that God was righteousness and spread by manipulating people's need to be right as an intermediary. That particular God was a gathering of rules created over the centuries by people who feared the mountain. The mountain couldn't be looked down upon. Compared to it, humans were just dust. The mountain could bring forth the supernatural. The mountain was Yomi. Yomi was darkness. That was why she, through human and animal fears, could completely control humans and animals that acknowledged her. However, God wasn't almighty. Since gods were righteousness, or the state of being right, and prioritized what was right above all, they were bound by their own rules. The primary problem was residence. Though Japan wasn't too religious, there was a latent idea that there was a god living in everything. That's from like Shinto, right? However, that meant that not everything in their lives was controlled by a single god. Eating, excreting, reproducing, working, sleeping, crimes, marriage, funerals, festivals. The idea that everything in life was controlled by a different god. That meant that the sphere in which a single god reigned, not necessarily physically, was extremely and strictly limited. The god in Haruchan represented the mountain, Yomi, darkness, and dreams. Thus she couldn't manifest anywhere else as long as she continued doing what was considered right. The place where it was right for her to be was the boundary. This place was probably a boundary for the god of those who lived here and built these dwellings. The ancient people of Hokkaido. The Ainu? Oh yeah, that's another bear anime. Forgot what it's called, Golden something. I read a little of that. I looked around the interior. There were old blackened sawdust-like decorations that I've never seen in any other culture. This is when Mami on speed dial would be good. She probably knows the lore here. I wasn't knowledgeable about this, but I could feel it in my bones that this had been left behind by the ones living here. We were receiving help from a different culture. It was best to think that the whole thing with the bears wasn't some natural cage. Like that was a thing. I suddenly felt something on my right shoulder. Shimmy had closed her eyes and fallen asleep. She probably got too comfortable. Well, even bike passengers grew tired, and we'd been running around for so long I could totally understand her. But there was something unexpected. She could see the gods that normal people couldn't unless they manifested themselves. It used to be a scary, unnerving, and troublesome existence for her. She still wasn't able to explain it beyond the abstract feeling she had, but I could somewhat understand her. Gods survived by clinging to human instincts and leveraging them to reproduce. However, that action was only beneficial to the god, not the people. In fact, we'd recently dealt with a god that was warped so badly it made people kill themselves or others, though it had been distorted by the human work known as the Shinai faith. God had a mind of its own and could easily force the people into destroying themselves for its sake. Chimmy could actually see it. It was covering most people she knew, and that was surely a scary idea. I was sure I would have been scared of and hated God if I was in her shoes. I wanted to set my own rules after all. Chimmy said that I had no God on me, and that was probably true. I had no sense of right and wrong. The most I could do was copy other people's rightness. Being fixated on my own rules instead of what was right was probably my way of rebelling against God. But rebellions often failed, and that was why I ended up housing God inside of me a few times. If I lived in that mountain alongside Rikato-san, I might have become a righteous person too. Though with Rikato-san, I couldn't be sure. She might have infected me with her arrow, grotesque god and turned me into her demonic servant. That actually didn't seem that bad. I was pretty interested in destroying Japan while Rikato's with Ricato's sexy ass alongside me. Well, we kinda saw that, so. Too much tentacles for my
門脇さん、
taste.
何に焼けてんの？
ちえみの体温が嬉しくて。
その嘘がとても嬉しくない。
Yeah, we know you're Tao, bro.
すみません、少々邪念に走っただけで、君がそばにいるのは本心から嬉しいです。
男の子ってば、まあ許す。
目が覚めた？
うん。夢見てた。
どんな？
ものすごいヒグマに囲まれて。
それ現実？
いやいや、夢でもヒグマ天国だったんだよ。でも、ちょっと違ってて、あんまり怖いとは思わなくて。なんか、ヒグマから話しかけられた。
What a fairy tale. I wanted to say that out loud, but couldn't. In many cultures, dreaming was the right way to meet God.
なんて？
知らない言葉だったんだけど、意味は分かったんだ。彼を送ってくれって。
Him? Who? I did have an assumption, though. I also guessed why we were sent here. Or why we, or just her, were chosen.
どこに行けばいいのかわかる？
多分、
方法は？
Shimmy closed her eyes and stretched through the dried grass spread out on the ground.
あった。
She took it out. A quiver? It was made of wood and leather, and were detailed patterns carved on its side. Inside there were 3 bright brown arrows. The feathers were brown and white, probably belonged to a bird of prey. All of it seemed too new to be relics.
こっちには弓もあった。
Shemi took out a bent wooden stick that was also really elegant and had an amber string at one of its ends. She skillfully bent it, picked up the string, and hooked it onto the other end. With that, the bow was complete.
君が使えるのは鉄砲だけかと思ってた。
いや、私もそう思ってたけど、なぜかわかるんだよね。
She just gained the bow skill when sleeping, man. OP. She put the quiver over her shoulder, took the bow in hand, grabbed the string with the other, and pulled it back and released. A sound. I heard that playing with bowstrings repelled evil, but I wasn't sure if that applied here.
しかし、その弓と矢で彼を送ることはできるのかな？
I wasn't knowledgeable about this, but the bow and arrow seemed too weak for a proper battle. It's either an evil animal or like a sick animal that needs to be killed either way, and the gods sensed that Shimmy was a hunter and brought her here to do the deed, I guess. That's what they're
毒を
going
使う
for.
みたい。
毒？
うん。春明さんが一度死んだやつ。
Classic. What was that? Now that wasn't something I wanted to remember. The Coyote Special. She crouched before some grass that had patches of purple on it.
トリカブト。
Aconite.
あとは、マムシグサと松ヤニと川の虫の。川はないか。いいや、とりあえずそれだけで。
なんだかモッチーみたいだ。今の君は。
そうかも。
操られてるとかじゃないんだよね。
うん。ただ、さっきの夢でヒグマが教えてくれたような気はする。
I see. It was divine info, and I knew various ways through which it could be passed on. One example was the methodology behind the feast, which was too thorough for it to be word of mouth. I couldn't perceive the god here or the bear dream Shemi had seen. The talent for seeing God might have been more powerful and profound than it first seemed. I don't know, to me it seemed pretty powerful and profound.
僕が掘るよ。
That's not to
幸い
him.
バイクのグローブをまだ持ってる。素手でやらない方がいいだろうから。
大丈夫？
ああ、今回僕は手伝いしかできなさそうだからね。
いや、それは助かるけど、すっごく大事な役割もお願いしたいんだけどな。
I had no idea why, but I instantly understood the role she gave me was bad news.
とりあえず掘ります。
ありがとう。
Whatever, this was a good role split. After all, she was the hero who'd killed God. As I dug the Aconite, I realized there were brown bears watching over us from a distance. Just watching though, not closing in. We knew they meant no harm this time, so neither Jeremy nor I were afraid. I just understood that this was the kind of place it was. After all the weird shit we've been through, I guess we can understand stuff like this better. I brought back the poisonous plants and placed their extract in one of the plastic bottles. We then dipped the tips of 3 arrows in, creating the poison arrows. While we were, Chemi was whispering something as though she was praying. It was a prayer to the god of poison, one of the countless gods of the Yao Yorozu. Her sincerity made it impossible for me to joke about it, so I just silently watched over her. Honestly, I found her beautiful right now, fantastical even. I could almost imagine her wearing the ancient traditional clothing of the people who lived here. Other things that came to mind were eagles, wolves, and blonde ninjas. One of those things is not like the other. Crap, that was just fiction. Beyond my weird delusions. Plus, I had no business being in touch with any god. That wasn't in my nature. I simply wanted to be free from anything, god or not, trying to bind me and do whatever I could as a free man. In this case, that was...
というわけで、春秋さんにはおとりになってもらいます。
そうだと思ったよ、こんちくしょう。
いやー、夢のヒグマさんがあいつは別に死んでもいいから的なことを言い出した時は思わず笑ったわ。
どんだけ神仏に軽視されてるんだ、僕は。
Well, I could understand them, though. Anyway, I parted ways with Shammy and started looking around all by myself, though I was actually just carefully moving forward. This was an animal trail. The grass carpet here was thin, and the young trees siding it were like a fence, making it somewhat clear that it was actually a road, a beast path. Body odor reeking of excreta, remains of hair, claw marks. It had plenty of info for you to conclude that this was beast territory. Unfortunately, we humans weren't sensitive enough to catch such hints. Thus, it was easy for us to get lost on the beast trail. It wasn't meant for human feet. It led to the realm of the mountain god. However, I didn't feel like I could get lost here. The gazes of the brown bears at the sides kept me on the road. That meant that I was on the right path. This was the path once crossed by the god we'd hunt. Chemi was hiding about 100 steps behind me. Now I just need to wait until it showed up. Still nothing? I'd been watching for an hour. It was actually getting to me now. Was Chemi still behind me? How was the divine mission she'd been given even right? What if he had to do something completely different? Like sacrifice me, for example. Well, I really didn't think I was hated enough to become a target right away, but still. What if our positions were reversed? If it was me, leading someone stuck in Hokkaido into a super dangerous scenario. Then as I somehow survive, cracking a smile and telling them it was just a prank. Man, would that be fun? Crap, I was actually worried right now. I wasn't sure if I could survive if someone got back at me for what I usually did. I turned around and headed 100 steps behind me to Chemi. She wasn't here. She actually abandoned me. I shouldn't have trusted her so easily. She probably just stealthed, man. Right, she said she'd be my enemy. Our relationship was all about who could fool the other more. What was I to do now? How could I survive this? Oh, I think that's the target, the darkness bear. I heard a growl behind me.
背中見せないで。背中を追う性質があるから。
So that was it. Ha ha ha. Basically, I was going through one of those myths where turning around meant defeat. God's passage showed its true form when you turned away, and I had just turned around and walked 100 steps to find Shemi. My back had been exposed to the anomaly. Well, maybe you needed to do that to bring it out, though. Knowing that it was too late, I faced forward again. The darkness bear. Nice. That is a zombie-looking bear, man. What I saw there was a way too large brown bear, covered in black miasma. This was definitely the boss, this evil aura, those shining eyes, the bloodlust that emanated from every part of its body. It stood on its hind legs and swung its two giant claws at me, making me jump backwards. The trees, the young and dead, as well as the earth beneath went everywhere. My flesh wasn't among the stuff. Yay! But the monster's specialty was going on all fours. Upon realizing it missed, and it got down and charged at me, and I was unable to get back up. My death was imminent. I solved such a major incident, and now I died to some bear monster I met after going to a Kaido on a whim? What kind of reader could tolerate this? Don't worry, bro. Think you're gonna be fine. Shit. Once I died, I would become a really annoying ghost and go around shouting lewd things around Shimi Surizawa. I should have already been dead, but I wasn't, so I opened my eyes. At that moment... Got him. The giant frame began to collapse. There were 3 poison arrows in it, the head, the shoulder, and the stomach. With a tremor, the creature collapsed, and... Shimi appeared next to me like it was no big deal.
いたんだ。
そりゃあね。
いや、100歩後ろをついてくるって話だったのに、100歩進んでも全然いないから逃げられたかと。
そりゃあ、合わせて100歩後退しましたとも。
True, lad, keep that distance.
いや、突発的なトラブルかもしれないじゃないですか。いきなり連絡が取れなくなったら不安じゃないですか。
That smile.
そうやって僕が不審に陥り、この道を逆に辿るのを待ってたってわけですか。
えへへ。
This little.
いいじゃん、いいじゃん。ギャグ。敵同士敵
Just a
同士。
prank,
ブラ
bro.
ックな信頼関係。そんな春明さんが大好きだよ。
Why are you mad? It was just a prank.
予想してたことをまとめて言った挙句、ど卑怯な手でごまかさないでほしい。
そんなん言ったら逃げ出したかもって本当に疑った春明さんにも文句言いたいかも。
僕じゃなくても1時間森の中でさまよわされたら不安になるっての。
True. Understandable.
あ、ごめん。春明さん、この件は後にしよう。
More?
ちょっと
というと。
Wait, we were completely ignored by all the other brown bears still around us. Was that a problem?
まあ、後でまとめて話すから。
She reached into her coat pocket and took out a useful little tool, a hunting knife.
春明さんは見ないであげて。多分それなりに苦しいところだから。
Chimmy had surely gone to dismantle the giant bear. I knew from the incident that she knew how to do that. I had no idea why this action was significant. However, at this point I didn't believe that she was doing something she shouldn't have. If that were the case, the brown bears watching over us wouldn't just sit by. And I also figured that me not watching that was an important part of it. I was an outsider whose only role was bait, so I wasn't allowed to see the sight behind me. It took a long time. 30 minutes, an hour, maybe a lot less than that, but honestly, Actual time didn't matter here. It took as much time as it needed to. I spent the whole time waiting.
終わったよ。
Upon hearing that, I finally stopped acting like a statue. Damn, did my joints hurt? Damn, did my joints hurt? Not a question. Once I turned around, I saw no sign of the ominous brown bear. There was only a large wooden stick. It was taller than me, and at its tip it split into two and held up a pure white beastly skull like a weather vane. I vaguely understood that this was the result of her killing a god.
帰ろう。
I heard brown bear grunts in the distance, and it felt like they were urging us to come with them. Lead us back to the bike. Chimmy led me by the hand for a few minutes, and we made our way out of the forest surprisingly easy. The bridge I mentioned before had a bus stop with a phone booth nearby, so I used it to call road services. We got in the road servicer's car and returned to my bike, which strangely wasn't collapsed on its side. Just a prank, bro. In fact, even the bag I'd thrown back at the bear chasing us was hanging on a handle. I looked at Chimmy's face, but her eyes seemed to be looking at something else. When we returned to a repair service in a nearby town and checked the damage, it was actually an early failure, but there was gonna be a recall soon. But I needed it to work, so I just paid to have it fixed. Fortunately, they had spare parts, and the bag containing my wallet had returned to me, so I had no trouble fixing it.
結局あれは何だったんだろう。
知りたい？
Sure.
超知りたい。
ね、ヒグマは毛皮と肉を携えて人のもとへ来てくれる神様みたいなものなんだ。そしてここの人たちはヒグマの子が手に入ったら大事に育てた後、大きな宴会を開いてその子をほふった。
Heard of that, actually.
それは自分たちに恵みをくれた神様への感謝とともに、神様を盛大に神の世界へと送り返す儀式だったんだ。だけどあの子は送ってもらえなかったみたい。
なぜだろ
う。わからない。送るべき人がいなくなったっていうのはヒグマたちが言ってた。だからあの子はずっと神の世界へ帰ることもできずに、どんどんおかしくなっていってしまったんだ。このままだと人を傷つけて悪い神になってしまうから。
So it's still transitioning to evil god, so good timing.
送ってほしいってヒグマたちはそう言ってた。
ふーん、なんだかな。
おや、ご不満が？
幻想物語としては面白いけど、熊殺しを正当化してるのは人間本位の神話設定でしょ。
True.
それを熊の方から望むってのはどうもな。
それはちょっとチエミエクスプレインがまずかった。
Chiemi explain.
どっちかっていうと、ヒグマたちは人間の残した責任を果たしてくれと言いたかったんだと思う。かつての人たちが自分たちの神様のもと捕まえ、縛り、そのままにした仲間を解放しろって。
The bear god.
なるほど。それならま
あ。あと、分かってるでしょ？あの場にいたのはみんな神様だよ。
I had a hunch. The forest itself wasn't human territory, it was an area close to the world of gods. Otherwise, we had been the main dish at the brown bear banquet. When we left the forest, Shimmy no longer had her arrows or quiver. Those things probably didn't quite belong to this world. We probably couldn't find those dwellings ever again either. That was probably a place created by the nostalgia of those who'd left for some reason, leaving behind the brown bear cub. Well, looking at it from the god theory standpoint, the information in our minds had probably been manipulated to suit their needs. That had to be it. No doubt about it. I don't know, man. I think gods just exist as sentient beings.
でもあまり近寄るべき存在じゃないんだろうね。
そうだね。それはその。
あれ、その手首。
There was something unfamiliar on Chimmy's wrist. Ooh, new drip just dropped. Looked like a bracelet made of fur-like material.
あれかな。俺
God bracelet.
毛皮と肉をたっぷり
That'll
置いてい
save
く
us
こ
in
とはできないか
depth
ら
loop whenever that comes out.
かもね。うん。しっかりした作りだし、意外とおしゃれかも。
熊川系女子。
Bear type of gal. I've heard of horse girls, but not bear girls.
それはやめて。
ただ、ちょっと想像してしまった。
何を？
これから行く先々で、君の力に目をつけた土着の神様どもから。
Yeah, side visual novel, just Chimmy's adventures helping gods.
そんでその度に新しい装備品を手に入れて、どんどん現代離れした格好になっていくちえみの姿をさ。
That worry wasn't quite unfounded. Chimmy had been born as a child of the snake and was exiled because of the corruption of Yomi. Her specialty as a girl from a family that watched over things might have merged with her fear of God to let her see God. She started out as a ruffian born into a harsh environment, but eventually she learned things, became strong, and grew up into a fine woman. Not to mention she had a hell of a weapon. Her origins, career... Wow, I didn't even see Chimmy. She looks kinda spooky right now. Fighting prowess, she was the perfect hero for a story. A story of a god killer. This reminded me that she also had retained memories from previous loops during that incident, which was never explained. She could carry her memories over to the next time without borrowing Mitsuji's powers. That's probably the result of her god killer talent, giving her the ability as the most important weapon in that endless loop. She resisted, chased down, and eventually killed God, and her weapons were the memories from her previous loops. She herself couldn't use this ability properly, but with my planning, she was able to kill a god. Or to kill God. Chimmy was now a real hero, and as such, she was probably in for a strange fate. That was what I was worried about. It made me wonder whether I had the right to stand at her side.
やめてよ。なんか冗談になんない気がする。
そうだよ。
Hey! I was like, what is this sound? It's the Revelation Corner. I played it off as nothing, and thankfully she didn't notice.
でも、ちょっと面白いかも。エキゾチックな謎グッズまみれになって、ゴッドハントの大暴れってか？
神殺し姫とか言って映画化希望。
こいつはどえらい中二病。
Shuni fans rise up.
なあ、あの200メートルほど先からものすごい勢いで走ってくる存在は何か追加の要件
I
で
think
も
that's
入れて
just
き
a
た
normal
神
ass
様
bear this time, because he didn't spawn right behind us like all of them.
多分普通の凶暴化したヒグマだと思う。
クマだークマが出たぞー警察呼べマタギを呼べ気分かむいよ静まり構え
逃げよう。
Yeah, it's probably smart. Plus we got the bite working. And so we'd experienced another divine, paranormal, incomprehensible scenario. Chami Serzawa, the hero, gained some XP, and I, who lived in reality, didn't quite like it. Though if our journey continued, I would soon become unable to deny it. And oh man, that was so scary I couldn't bear it. Oh, you're so funny, man. And what a wild ride. Too bad they didn't have like a corner at the end of the story. I'd like to get Sheep and Rikako's thoughts on it. But yeah, good. Okay, so like each of these stories are like 1 episode long. Pretty fun stuff. I enjoyed myself. I'm excited for you know, it's nice seeing the main pair, but like going down, see how I hope it's like it's other characters too, right? Well, this one sounds like another Haruaki one. Oh, and it's illusion comedy. So these ones are actually gonna be, well, scary, but comedy horror. That's just pure horror, pure comedy, pure documentary. Look at that genre tagging. Gotta love it. Alright guys, thanks for watching as always. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode, and I will see you next time with Blockhead versus Final Boss. Who will win? Oh wait, this is Ratato. Yeah. This is Ratato no Sato. Oh man, I'm so fucking hyped.